Okay, I got interrupted there for a second. There was a phone call coming in, but so let me get back to my train of thought. I also enjoy the example he brings up of Obama and Mitt Romney and how, neither of those people actually, in a way, tap into the American value, so to speak, of being what he calls, some American people tend to be able, they want to identify, for the most part, the majority of people, with someone that they could sit down and have a beer with. The idea that, in a way, neither one of those political candidates really fit that image of something that, Americans, hardworking, down to earth, not elitist, really. And at the same, what's funny and ironic that he points out is that even Obama was aware of that to an extent, and he actually at one point planned a beer summit where Henry Louis Gates Jr. and this other person, he set up a meeting with them, and he called it a beer summit just to accentuate that, oh yeah, I drink beer too, I'm a down-to-earth kind of guy too, but it's hard to change. Some people, just because of the way they carry themselves, the way they act, the way they speak, you can just tell that they don't necessarily fit in with the mainstream in certain ways. Of course, Obama was elected anyway. That didn't stop him from being elected, but it's funny that, sometimes certain values that a person presents as part of their persona or their ethos, they either are in sync with their audience or they're not. And so this goes back to the idea of identity, knowing what your audience's values are, what are your values, trying to find a way to connect with them on some level, and being aware that, one of the hardest things to ever change, it's very hard to change your audience's values. There's almost no point trying to change their values. If anything, try to use your audience's values to your advantage. Try to find the positive in them. Try to turn a positive spin on them and find a way to connect. And to be aware that, sometimes one of the first things people say when they are talking about themselves is they actually are bringing up the most important things if you pay attention. If you listen to a person and what they are talking about, what are the key words that they bring up a lot, you're finding out if you listen closely. And he mentions these examples on page 242 and 243. I'm a mother, I have 2 beautiful children, I'd do anything for. The translation of that is, this is a person who believes in family and in sacrificing for love. Another one, I'm a Marine, semper fi, which actually, translating that in terms of values might be, this person values belonging to an elite group and in being loyal. Because semper fi is short for the Marines' Latin motto, semper fidelis, which means always faithful. Or I'm an entrepreneur, I'm independent, risk-taking type, I'm successful, which shows that this person values independence and risk-taking, and they value wealth. And I would say that, just listen closely to people. Look at even how they dress and what they wear. You can tell what is valuable to this person. Is this person, really business-oriented? Is this person counterculture? Is this person focused on technology? Is that what's most meaningful to them? You can tell by the way people speak and dress and the way what they're talking about the majority of the time, what's important to them. I have a friend who's a comedian, and when I was first getting to know this friend of mine, he was great, funny guy. I was always joking around with him. We have had a comedy club together for a while. But what's funny is, as I got to know him pretty quickly, what I also realized was important to him is being a veteran of a foreign war, being over in Iraq, and Christianity. This is a person with really strong Christian values, which to me at first was kind of strange because this guy has definitely a potty mouth. A lot of comedians do, could joke about anything. And so when he was talking about being Christian and how important God is in his life, it was like, whoa, this is, so, sometimes you meet comedians and that's the last thing they're going to talk about is, spirituality. But I learned, these are important values to my friend, and I respected that and didn't ignore that, So you find it all the time. If you look closely at the cues that people are presenting to you, they're giving you a good insight into what they value. And so the last part of this chapter is really his way of guiding you as a speaker towards this concept of a halo, which you can use in the way that you construct your speech, your ideas, the way, when you're trying to influence someone to do something or think differently. It's basically an image or a symbol of the essence of the way you're trying to help this person re-envision, whatever the challenge is. So he gives the example of, soldiers and how they had to be inoculated against smallpox, but there was resistance to these soldiers getting inoculated because it was going to leave a scar on the side of their arm, their upper arm, where it's prime tattoo. That's where people like to get tattoos. So if you get a scar there, it would be hard to get a tattoo there. And he knew that, at the time, the government group that he was working with, he knew that he was trying to help them find a way of overcoming the soldiers' resistance to getting this shot in their arm right there. So he had to find a way to make getting a scar on the side of their arm somehow a positive thing, how to turn it into something positive. And he talks about how, winnowing it down to the most basic idea. How do you summarize what the issue is in just a couple of words? And that's the first step. He calls it, getting to the pith. And so scars are bad. That's the issue that he's dealing with. How am I going to turn scars are bad into something good, into something positive? And then he thinks about the values. What are the values? What's the commonplace? What's the connection that we have here? And so the ideas of strength and sacrifice and honor, these are the values that pretty much all soldiers hold dear. That's what motivates them to act in service of their country, is being strong, having a sense of duty and honor, and being willing to sacrifice their own personal needs for the greater good. So those are the values. Now, how to turn that into something that will help change the negative connotation of a scar? Well, then thinking about it more, a visual symbol for the scar for him became, scars are like a badge of honor. That scar on the side of your arm is a badge of honor. So that's the halo. How can you take something that's negative and turn it into a positive by including some kind of a visual element, how can you create a picture in your audience's eye to help them see something, turn it into something positive? And I think we do this all the time, whether we realize it or not. I've done this as a parent a lot. At one point, my kids they kept focusing on the word weird, and they kept calling everything weird. And weird in our culture has a negative connotation often. That person's weird, or their haircut is weird, or this is weird and stupid, And then a friend of mine once said, actually, did you know that the word weird can also be spelled W-Y-R-D? And the root of the word actually goes back to the idea of the fates, of magic, of the power of, magical, supernatural spirits changing the outcome of things, the power of the supernatural world. So now when I think of the word weird, I think of fairies, and witches changing the outcome of things. That it's weird. That person's weird. Well, that person might have power, some kind of supernatural power to change things. And so that actually helped to remind my kids, well, you know what weird actually means? It means that you're really powerful because you're so different, because you have this mystical power, this like a fairy, to change. You have the power to change. And so it started to add a more positive spin to that word that, a lot of kids use to sort of, when they don't know how to deal with something, they call it weird. Other examples that I've thought of when thinking about this concept of halo is, I don't know if you were following in the news when Gwyneth Paltrow was in the process, or still is in the process of getting divorced. Instead of calling it divorced, they were calling it conscious uncoupling. Which I'm laughing just because it's different, but there is an effort in that image, conscious uncoupling, to take away that negative connotation that here's a couple, they're together, and we're uncoupling them. We are just separating them. We're not having this terrible ripping apart of people. We were tied together and now we're coming apart. And it's conscious. We are aware of the fact that we're making this choice. So it really does, there's a visual element to it that I think overtakes, the negative aspect of divorce. Divorce, what do you think of people that are unhappy and they're arguing and they're bitter, but conscious uncoupling. No, it sounds like a slow, refined, sophisticated way of ending a relationship. And another example, again, from my life as a parent, we've gone through different periods of time where, I have twins. So at one point, one child may have a sleepover at somebody else's house and the other one doesn't. And then there's, jealousy. I wish I want to go to somebody's house. And early on, I realized I can turn this around. Instead of focusing on one getting to do something and one not getting to do what they want, one gets to go have a sleepover. Well, the other one gets to have mom-son time or mom-daughter time. We get to have this moment together. And I didn't know at first if, they would buy into it. But actually, they did. They realized that this is our special time. We get to enjoy time together. It's not a negative thing. It's actually a gift that we get to spend this time that we wouldn't get to when, we were all together and everyone was needing attention. So I think we do it all the time. We put a positive spin on things, and the more our language is able to do that in some kind of a visual sense, telling a story with pictures, that halo, the greater ability you will have an impact on your audience. And so that's it for today, and more soon. Have a lovely day.